Today on Locked On Red Wings, the winning streak is snapped in Seattle, and Tyler Bertuzzi is off the trade block.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast, while Scotty is the freelance journalist of the for the Detroit News, as well as the host of Locked On Tigers, trying to merge those two things that you do there. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And we got a pretty full slate for you guys today on this Monday episode. So obviously, there was the game in Seattle, which the winning streak was snapped, which stinks, and we'll talk about that probably here in segment one. But we also have the rumor via Elliote Friedman. So whenever Elliote Friedman says something, it's pretty accurate. It's pretty much gospel, yeah. That Tyler Bertuzzi is off the trade block as the Red Wings are now very suddenly in the hunt for a wild card spot. And then also, if we have time, we will get to what we teased on the Friday episode, which is the implications of a Mata extension. But if not, we'll save that for another day because, as we all know, he's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, Scotty, to lead things off with this conversation about the Seattle Kraken loss, I feel as if, despite the loss, it was at the end of a long West Coast portion of the road trip because they still have one more road game in Washington to play, Washington, D.C., that is. And so it's hard for me to really be super overly critical on this loss when you're playing your fourth game on the West Coast super late at night. I mean, I know over there it's not super late at night, but your body's used to Eastern Conference, and it's a road trip. I don't know, man. It's hard for me to look at this game, and there's obviously like huge things that were glaring issues, but like it's hard for me to really be critical on them coming off of a W5 on the fourth game of a West Coast road trip.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, the West Coast, the Western Canada plus Seattle road trip went, I think, better than anybody expected. It is pretty much rejuvenated the fan base and rejuvenated a lot of discussion just single-handedly. It put us, as we're going to talk about later, kind of closer to a little bit closer in those in the hunt graphics. Like it really went better than anyone I think could have expected it to go. They almost swept it. It was a loss. It was the last leg of the West Coast part of it. I am definitely not losing sleep over this loss, and they got outplayed, and they got punched in the mouth for two periods. Like they got pretty brutally outplayed for the first 2/3 of that game, and then in the third they did. I'm trying to remember what time frame it was this season, but there was a stretch of games for like 2 weeks, maybe.
So the Pittsburgh game,
early December or something like that. But there was
a game against the Penguins.
Yeah,
that's the most notable one,
right? There was a stretch of games where for like a week and a half or 2 week stretch, it felt like every time we were coming on the show and talking about our game recap, we were discussing how the Wings got outplayed for two periods and then looked really good in the third. Or they would do the opposite, right? And look really good for the first two periods and then get outplayed in the third. So going kind of back to our roots, I felt like a lot with this game, this 10:30 puck drop game. And yeah, I don't think there's a ton of like noteworthy stuff. Like you got flat out outplayed. That's pretty objective in my opinion. And you'll take your single game loss, but you'll gladly take how the West Coast road trip went as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, like watching the game, it just felt like a tired team. It felt like a tired, disjointed team for like you said, the 2/3 of that game. Now in the third period, they came alive. It took them a while to get their legs, and Dylan Larkin had two beautiful chances. And just couldn't bury the puck. And then obviously near the end of the third, because those two chances came with like 10 minutes left, near the end of the third, he finally got on the score sheet, which is great to see as he continues to stay hot. Assist from Tyler Bertuzzi. So it's like, Yeah, man. Husso didn't have a great game. That first goal he let in by Jordan Eberle would just trickled past him. He should have made the save. Sherrod Hronik looked really, really bad. I think they were like a -3 in this game. It wasn't a great game, but I also I'm not going to be too hard on them, just taking the full context of the situation. I mean, you talk about what wasn't working for them. If this is the first game, I think, all road trip. Well, that's not true. That would be hyperbolic of me. This game, the shots were really close by the end of the game, and all the advanced metrics say it was all close at the end of the game. But that's again because that third period was so dominating. I keep going back to it, man. Some guys didn't play well. Some guys did play really well. I think the fourth line was really, really strong in this game, and I just thought, I'm completely biased, and I admit that I'm a Zadina believer. I haven't given up on him yet, and I know there's so many people that have. But that fourth line, ever since Zadina's been on it, has almost always consistently been top of like the metric charts. Oscar Sundquist, Pucitor, and Philip Zadina had an expected goals for percentage of this game of 86, 86, and 85 to lead the team. And then followed by Jake Wollman and Jordan Osterley and Moritz Cider. Like those guys have been, that fourth line has been the better fourth line against any other fourth line they've played against on this win streak, I mean, including this loss. Like, Suter got a goal again in this game. Great shot by Wollman. A couple shot attempts by Wollman before that one finally got through. I mean, that fourth line has been producing a lot more, and I know I'm trying to say it's all because of Zadina. It could have just been coincidence that they get hot right as he comes back, but that fourth line with Zadina has been very good.
Yeah, for sure. It can be a fit thing too. If that's if Zadina's play style just meshes well with the dudes that were already down there on the fourth line, then there you go. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was, I don't know if I want to say just flat out if I thought that they were the best line, but they certainly were very, very good in this game. And yeah, I mean, again, like this is just a tough end to a road trip, or the West Coast portion of the road trip. This Kraken team is good. Like they're legit. They've scored a lot of goals this season, and this was not a gimme game at the end of a West Coast road trip. So yeah, like I said, they got punched in the mouth. They tried to claw their way back at the very end. Some very end of game theatrics as well. Some
Yeah.
controversy there by, honestly, Bert kind of right in the middle of it, which is fitting given what we're going to talk about today. But yeah, this was a very hard fought third and a very sluggish first two periods, and that's pretty much. I guess we can talk about Husso a little bit. I thought, like you said earlier, like his first goal that he gave up was kind of a weakish goal, but I didn't think he was awful either. And the rest
No.
was kind of just same old defense. So
Yeah, it wasn't a strong game by Husso, but again, I think only that first goal you could put on him because pretty much the
yeah,
other three goals were no defenders out in front. I counted at least two goals where there were one or two Seattle Kraken out in front of Husso without any defenders there. And
yeah,
I can't really blame Husso for not making a save when he's got no defenseman trying to help him out.
right.
But yeah, that controversy at the end of the game, did Cider really deserve a 10-minute minor for that or a 10-minute major for that? That's
I don't know. I honestly, I don't even really want to get into it. Like I know it's our job, like to talk about it, but I thought it was blown significantly out of proportion. To be honest with you, I Seattle was pissed. Detroit was kind of like whatever. Like the game is pretty much over anyway. Um, yeah, I mean, it was also there was some confusion over like Burt versus Cider and like which is which and which was going to get the 10 and everything. So yeah, it was weird kind of controversy at the end of the game, but whatever. It didn't actually affect the outcome of the game whatsoever. So who cares?
yeah, it was just really bizarre. I don't NHL reffing, man. I don't get it. But whatever. That game, we'll wash our hands of it. We're done. We're clear. We're clean. Because now it's on to Washington, and that is a team you're chasing in the wild card. And if you can beat Washington, I don't know if Ovechkin's going to be back yet because his dad unfortunately passed away. I don't know how long he's going to be gone.
Yeah.
But if they're without Ovechkin, that game, I mean, it's already a must win, but that game you have to win if Ovi's not there. Because
Yeah.
without Ovi, that team is lost. So this becomes a game that is so monumental to this team. Just as Tyler Bertuzzi has quickly become monumental. And we'll talk about that in segment 2. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about Athletic Greens. Our next partner has a product you got to use literally every day. Start taking AG1 because what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging, all the things. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. Contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover. It cost him $100 a day. So because it cost him so much money, he went out of his way to create one for you that costs you less than $3 a day. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. So it came out via the 32 Thoughts podcast. Elliote Friedman said that he's hearing that Tyler Bertuzzi is off of the trade block. And Scotty, that comes on the back of this 5-game win streak where, let's face it, Tyler Bertuzzi has had a huge impact on this team's success recently. That top line's production level, and you could even credit a lot of Dylan Larkin's production level to the type of style and play that Tyler Bertuzzi brings. And let me just ask you first. How do you feel about not trading Tyler Bertuzzi and pursuing a playoff spot?
That's a very.
I had to ask you first because I don't want to just
No, I mean it's just that's a very black and white question, man. Like I don't see them buying. I don't. I think that there's way too much risk involved in buying, especially if it is going to cost you assets for the future. I think they're too young and still building in the right direction, and it's just honestly somewhat unjustifiable. Now, if you were bringing in talent that was under control for a while, then that's different. But there's no way that the Wings are going to go out there and buy like rentals at the deadline. That's just not happening. So this news makes me believe that they are a lot closer to just standing pat than I think we've discussed before or that we've given them credit for. That's what I view it as. I think it's either, they lose the next 3 or 4 games heading into the deadline, well, then they're going to sell. And if they stay hot and get themselves, 2-3 points out of the wild card spot, then I think they stand pat. I don't see them buying rentals. Like I said, I no matter how hot they get, I don't see that happening in the time from now to the deadline. And how I feel about it is a great question that I think
it's
I'm
conflicting, right?
To try and find out as well.
For me, it's a very conflicting feeling because on one hand, I never wanted Bertuzzi to get traded. I just thought it was the logical move. And so I'm excited that at the prospect of him staying throughout the season. On the other hand, I'm also very excited at the idea of going for a playoff spot because that's something that, obviously the Lions did it this season, but here in Detroit, we haven't witnessed that as a Red Wings fan since 2016. It's been a good, 7 years already. And so the idea of gunning for a playoff spot excites me. But at the same time, I realize that, at what cost? If you make it to the playoffs, is this team built to succeed in the playoffs? I don't think so. But at the same time, if you do make the playoffs, that in itself is a success because then you get crucial playoff experience for young guys who haven't experienced it. Like a lot of teams that become Stanley Cup contenders evolve into that, right? So, like, I understand if they make the playoffs and even if they lose in 5 games, now Moritz Cider and Lucas Raymond have that playoff experience. That'll take them to another gear. But on the reverse side of things, if you go for the playoffs, you keep Tyler Bertuzzi and you don't make the playoffs and he just walks away in free agency, I don't know if that's not worth it in my opinion, because I think I think Tyler Bertuzzi is worth, I wouldn't say a haul, but like we talked about it, either a high draft pick and a mediocre prospect or a high prospect and a mediocre draft pick, especially as his play has continued to improve. He's been phenomenal on this 5-game win streak. And even in the games against Seattle last night, he was pretty good. So it's like very conflicting, like you said. But I think another thing too is with this team succeeding, trading Bertuzzi, I think, sends the wrong message to the locker room as well. Like, I don't care that you guys are gunning for a playoff spot. We're getting this guy out of here and getting assets in. I think that would cause a downward spiral for the team. And plus, losing Bertuzzi, like, if you trade Bertuzzi, I also think you're basically saying we're not making the playoffs. I think that is what you're saying. So I get it. I get taking him off the trade block and gunning for the playoffs if this is what's truly happening. But Elliote Friedman reported it. So I understand the logic behind it. But I'm also terrified of the idea of Bertuzzi walking away for nothing and the Red Wings coming up with nothing in the end by not making the playoffs, I guess is what my point is.
Yeah, I think that's a
I'm
very
conflicted,
real
like you.
right. I think that's a very real sentiment. I don't think that it is the end of the world if they hold on to Bert and he walks anyway. I mean, yes, you'd be missing out on some assets like coming your way, but it's not like the return would have been like rebuild altering. Like it's
Yeah.
not like you'd be looking around, you'd be like, oh, like if you trade him, then you're getting the
No, I understand.
assets that are gonna fast forward this a year, and we're guaranteed we're gonna get some great players. They're gonna whatever. Like it's I don't think it's completely, and maybe that's just again me being somewhat sour on the possible like return that you could get out of him, and that's again like he's been playing great lately and whatnot, but it's just like rental wingers that have a lot of injury history in the last 2 years. Like that's a shaky market,
Yeah.
and also, like wingers are everywhere, and I know Bert plays a specific style that is very unique to him, and that's what makes his value higher. And I totally get that, but winger is the deepest position in the NHL. Like
Well, and you bring
that's
up,
something that if you miss out on Bert, okay, we're just going to go to the next team that's selling a winger, and so it's I don't fear the potential missing out on a return as much as I think the average fan does. But at the same time, I mean, objectively, something is better than nothing if you're not going to make the postseason. So
yeah, but that's the thing is you don't know you're not going to make the postseason. This team's
correct, yeah,
not
it's a
so
risk for
down.
sure.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And you made a really good point too. Is like just because I have this inherent value in Bertuzzi doesn't mean that the teams across the league is. He could have taken Bertuzzi off the trade block because he's not hearing what he wants to hear as well. And
Well,
it's
that
like
that
I'm not
that was
gonna.
where my brain went
Yeah,
immediately. I was like, okay, he's playing really well lately. The team is somewhat in the hunt, and I'm sure that the trades that he's been given are not reflective of the 5 or 6 game heater that the team and Bert specifically have been on.
yeah,
I think that it's all about value management. That's the name of the entire game in any sport. Being in the front office, it's all value management. Is the value of Bertuzzi, is he more valuable to hold on to and make a playoff run on for and keep for at least the next 4 months, potentially higher, whatever, depending on the contract extension. But even if you just assume rental, is the value with the Red Wings greater to hold on to him because he's going to be vital if he stays healthy to a playoff push? Or is the value greater to trade him now and get a return that is probably more reflective of what his value was pre
yeah.
All-Star break? Because I don't think any opposing GM is like, oh, he's had 5 good games, let me give you 8 first now. You know what I mean? Like I think that it's probably just value assessment, and I think I don't fault Yzerman of the front office for coming to the conclusion that the higher value is probably just to hold on to him at this point. I don't disagree with it, to be honest.
I completely agree with you on everything. And I honestly, Scotty, I think you're bringing up some really killer points here. It's just coming into the season, I knew that this wouldn't be a hard sell just because they're sending guys to longer extensions now. There are going to be less people. Like, I thought their guys who are on expiring deals would get dealt. But I think and you said this to lead off the segment, and I want to round up and finish back with what you said. I think we weren't giving enough credit, like you said, that this team is further along than maybe we thought they were and not going to be selling as hard. Like, I thought the UFAs would be gone. Like, the pending UFAs would just be gone, and that's the extent of it. No big blockbuster trades out of the Red Wings, but by locking up Olimata, I think that signified that this team isn't going to, like you said, is going to stand more pat and not sell off nearly as hard. So, like, you might see a deal or two, but this isn't going to be a hard sell year. And, even though I knew it wasn't going to be a hard sell year, I might end up still being surprised by the lack of selling. I don't think they're going to buy. I think you're completely right that buying is the wrong move with where this team is at. But this could be the first year we see this team not sell, which, again, I'm very conflicted because I'm really excited at this prospect. But at the same time, I'm like, but picks, which you don't know are going to turn into anything anyways, but you're like, it's that prospect.
I mean, standing pat certainly is a lot better option when we reassess where we wanted the team to end the season at going into opening night, when we talked about our goals for the team. Standing pat certainly gets you a lot closer to being one of the better teams that doesn't miss the playoffs or being in that hunt late in the season than it does selling at the deadline. And I to your point earlier, and like a side bubble of a completely different point, I'm not sure how many tradable assets this team, like shiny tradable assets, this team even has.
Nobody that's about to be gone, at least. You're not going to trade away anyone that's
right.
Good
So, like, the value for all the UFAs, like Jake Wallman's and Bird are really the only two that you're kind of looking at, like, maybe you could get something. But really, like, all of the pending UFAs, it's probably, again, value assessment, just more beneficial to the Detroit Red Wings to hold on to them and just see what this team can do at and push in the second half of the season than it is to trade them for an underwhelming return because they are rentals.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation and wrap the Olimata situation into it. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about our official Locked On sportsbook partner of FanDuel. It's the midway point of the NBA season, and now is the perfect time to download the FanDuel app, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown. To learn more, make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Yeah, Scotty, to continue this conversation, because let's wrap that Olimata contract extension in here. Another 2 years, $3 million each. Good for Olimata. It complicates the left side of the D pairings for the future going forward. But Yzerman's always had the philosophy, like, if you want ice time, you got to earn it anyways. He was never going to give roster spots to young guys, which I think is a phenomenal standpoint to have. But I was so convinced at the start of this season. And I think, Scotty, I'm very conflicted. Much like you were. And I love that I'm conflicted. Because at the start of the season, we had it so black and white in our mind about how this team and how this year is going to play out. But we kind of, I won't say you did, I kind of neglected the nuances to that. we agreed and we were on the same mindset that this team would be on the outside looking in at the end of the season and be like 85-point range and that they would sell at the deadline. But it is so much more nuanced than that. And I am discovering that and discovering areas where I am wrong. It's if you're on the outside looking in just barely, you're not going to sell at the deadline. That, of course, you're not going to sell hardcore at the deadline, at least. You might make one or two small trades. And like you said, Scotty, the guys who are UFAs that they currently have, you're not dealing Wallman, you want to extend him. Bertuzzi, if, like you said, wingers are in abundance. If the market's not there for him, just keep him and run it back for the playoffs. It's just, I neglected to think about the nuances and how exciting and how scary that could be, because now you're in this phase of the rebuild where it could go wrong. It could not work out, but also it could work out. And that's that part of the rebuild that's so scary, is you're starting to see the fruits of the labor and whether or not it's going to work out. And Oli Mata's extension is one of those things that's like, it caught me off guard because I assumed on a 1-year deal he'd be a sell. But with him playing as well as he has, he's been a solid depth defenseman on the left-hand side, anywhere in the lineup that you've put him. And it's like, it's not so simple. He's here now for 2 more years, and I like that, and it caught me off guard. But where does this leave the Red Wings?
Well, it leads you to the most important part of any rebuild timeline. That's where we are.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people are starting to realize, especially given the heater that they've been on since the All-Star break. A rebuild, you're good. You realize it's going downhill. You sell off assets. You go down, down, down. You hit rock bottom. You have the 2019-20 season. You're absolutely awful. One of the worst hockey products I've ever seen on NHL ice. You start building it back up again. Where rebuilds are either successful or are failures happens right when you start the ascension again, and you're right at the midway point, the breaking point between this is either you're going to make wrong decisions as a front office and it's going to go back down, or you're going to make the right decisions and you're going to ascend into a legitimate contender.
And that's where
this is where we are at. We are at, and it's stressful and it's scary, but like we are at the most important part of any rebuild in any sport. We're right there. We're out of the dumps. We're not the cellar dweller team anymore. We are right on the cusp of the postseason. And now any move we make from here on out, or any moves we don't make from here on out, will be of the mindset of what is going to help us get over the edge and get ourselves back into the postseason and having the ability to play for the Stanley Cup. That's where we're at. So whatever we do from here on out, whether we stand pat, whether we sell, etc., every single move we make is now a part of the most important part in any rebuilding timeline.
Yeah.
And Godspeed.
It's just one of those things where, like, I don't think that I know everything about this sport. I mean, the highest level I ever played was 4 games of like junior C hockey. And then everything else was house league. Like, I don't think I'm some kind of genius.
Prospects page, though.
Thank you. So when watching this Red Wings team, and at this point, like, it is so conflicting because I don't know what the best decision is. I can see both sides, especially, wrapping back to the Tyler Bertuzzi thing. I can see both sides and the benefits and the cons of keeping him and trading him. And I don't know what the best decision is. That's why it's so exciting and almost kind of terrifying at the same time that, that's why we trust Steve Yzerman, or trust the front office as much as we do, to make those decisions, because I don't know what the best route is for the Red Wings to take at this point. Was extending Oli Mata for another 2 years the right choice? I don't know, but we're going to see. But I like the idea of having a competitive left side of the D-corps going for years forward, because you have guys like Simon Edvinsson, who's playing great in Grand Rapids the second half of the year right now, who's going to be making a run for the roster next year's training camp. That's going to be a competitive defensive core, and that's exciting. But at the same time, what if, like, is it worth clogging that side of your defense? Like, what are you going to do if Simon Edvinsson's ready and you just have no one to send down? I guess you just wave them and hope they, it's just.
Yeah, but I mean, if you prove it on the ice, you're going to find a spot for you. Like, I'm not really worried about that. But I I think I love the extension, and I think that I am such a big, and if you listen to me at Locked On Tigers, you're aware because we have this conversation all the time. I am such a big advocate for organizational depth. That's like a necessity for any good team. Look at any good team in any sport. It's organizational depth. It's if one person goes down, who I guess NBA is pretty like star driven and individualistic at this point, but like there's a next man up mentality that's so vital, especially in sports like hockey and baseball that have minor leagues. Like your entire goal is to have a competitive NHL roster as well as a really solid whatever league, but like minor league affiliated roster so that you can reach down and pull up someone who is competent and is going to fill a hole at the NHL roster and still be productive. Like that is so vital for every successful hockey team like ever. And so having that I don't think is ever a bad thing. And you know, just to like wrap it up, you know, the second half of the year, I think the reason that it's scary is just because when was the last time the Detroit Red Wings had, I don't even want to say expectations because that doesn't feel like the right word, but if you stand pat and you go, we're running it and we're making a push and we're running it with the boys, like when was the last time that you were sitting down to watch this hockey team and you were like, oh my goodness, this is like, we need to win this hockey game. Like, we
Yeah.
need to win. We need to win like 2 of the next 3. We need to steal some points. Like, we need, like, do you remember that feeling of like the playoff hunt, like the playoff chase? That's something we haven't felt in so over half a decade. Like, that's something we haven't felt in so long. And so, yeah, like it's terrifying because they could stand pat and then lose the next 6 games after the trade deadline, and now we're like, okay, well, great. We that was a calculated risk. That was a misfire, but I'm always going to root for the organization choosing winning over losing as well, especially at this point in the rebuild. So
I think you may have kind of also hit a nerve there with what you said to me regarding like you remember the excitement of the playoff hunt. I think that conflicting feeling that I have is that excitement for the playoff hunt. Like I feel conflicted and kind of scared about missing the playoffs. And that is that thrill. Like I am excited at the idea of making the playoffs, but I'm also, it's like, I'm scared to believe, Scotty. I'm so scared to believe that. I'm so scared to believe.
We have big trust issues with believing in teams in this city. So I totally understand.
But I mean, if you look at, so the Red Wings obviously lost on Saturday night, but every team ahead of them in the wild card race also lost. Pittsburgh, the Islanders, Washington, and Florida all also lost.
What are they 4 out?
They are now, they're 3 out of, or they're 3 out of tying for the Islanders for the second wild card spot right now. So, and if you look at the points percentage again, the Red Wings would be the last team on the outside looking in because the Sabres have a 5.56 points percentage. You have a 5.54. Here,
hosting a show of a team where like every episode we're like standing watching?
Yeah, dude.
We've never even
right now.
We've never even considered what we would do if we actually had to incorporate the success of other teams into our shows. That's never even. I've been here for 2 years now, like around this month, February of 21, and that's never even crossed my mind. And you've been here for what, a year and a half, over a year now, and that's never been something we've even remotely had to consider in our time together. I mean, man, it gives you butterflies, but it's scary, man.
I mean, and they struggled for such a large part in the middle of the season that I didn't look at the standings for the longest time.
Well, there's so many times we come on here, we're like, well, they got outplayed, but like a dub's a dub. Like
it's like after 5 wins, I didn't realize how close this wild card race was. Even when they were struggling, they weren't completely out of it. They win 5 games in a row, and suddenly they're just 3 points out. They're right back in the thick of things. And it's like, I don't know, man. I was so rock solid in my conviction coming into the year, Scotty, about what this team was and what they were going to do. And in the end, like what I predicted could end up being true. They could be 85 points just on the outside looking in. But there are so many things that I could have been wrong about along the way. And if I'm wrong about them in a positive manner, like if things that I predicted to be worse ended up being way better, then I will be very happily wrong. Like, guys, if they make the playoffs and you come at me and say, you thought they were going to miss, ha, 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 I'm not going to be mad.
Yeah.
I'll be excited.
We say that all the time, right? We would much rather be wrong and have it benefit the Red Wings than be right about something pessimistic. So
I'm just so scared to believe, man. I'm so scared to believe.
I mean, like, and that's the thing is this could change so dramatically. We're having this conversation now. We lose the next two. You know what I mean? Like that could change. There's still time until the trade deadline. You know what I mean? Like that's not tomorrow. So like this conversation is fluid. This is not like concrete. This is just the mindset that everyone should have, and this is our mindset of the deadline and with Bert and everything. Like this is so fluid. We could be having this conversation a few days from now and just completely be called like flip-floppers. Like it's just it's a really weird place to be at right now where the Red Wings are. So if it's a weird place and you're not sure of the judgment and it's this is kind of this weird in-between phase, probably the safer bet is to stand pat if you're at a weird kind of in-betweener type of place.
I think the end of the conversation is just simply this, Scotty. Let's go Red Wings.
Let's go Red Wings, baby. We ball.
All right. We'll be back tomorrow with a game preview and probably more conflicted feelings and scared thoughts. That's just me. Scotty's very confident. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.